Begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be with us this evening. And as you can see, I'm Jane Bunn, and as you can see, there's a cold front coming in here from the west, if you can see that there. And anyway, so welcome. I've got to do things. It's because of the COVID, you see, I don't have any slaves. Okay, there we go. So thank you very much for being with us. And we're here because of the this business of the new Amendment C269. I should know that off by heart by now, Amendment 269. Which is coming up soon. And so what we're doing this evening is we're having an information evening, if that's what you'd like to call it, where we're going to present to you a range of speakers who will address these very important issues when it comes to the City of Yarra and protecting our heritage for future generations, and for even us more mature people would like to have it hang around too. So we have, I think, 8 speakers this evening. They'll speak one after another. At some point, we'll have an interval where you can just stretch your legs and absorb what you've heard so far. Then we'll finish off with our speakers and we'll open the evening to questions. So next button to press. What was that one? Oh, there we go. That's the next one. So what we've got... look, hang on, I think I'll do this, and then there we go. And I've got to go to a different view now because things change and you don't know what's going on. Anyway, look, it's really nice of you to be here. It's interesting to note we recently had 3 evenings of Meet the Candidates done in this format, and it was hugely successful. It was a really wonderful event. And it's been up on YouTube, or all 3 nights have been up on YouTube, and it's had over 3,000 views. So this is going to go viral, this particular one. I've got great hopes for it, and we'll see how we go. So we have our guests here, and before I introduce them, or let them introduce themselves really, but before I do, what I'd like them to do, could you all sort of put your hands up, you know, around a bit in front of your face, but level with your ears, okay? And then I want you to start doing this. It might be all good to go probably left to right. Let's start with left to right. Ready? Just stop there and I'll say go. And we go left to right. Ready? Go. Left, right, left, right. And while you're doing that, you're sort of looking up, or you're looking sideways, or you're looking down, or you're looking there, or you're looking all over the place. Are you ready? That's beautiful. Here we go. Hang on. Any minute now. There we go. Thank you. I've always wanted to do that. All right. Now I've got to go back to my running order. Where are we? Speakers. Did you hear that music? Oh, don't tell me I'm low. Oh,
yes, we heard it.
Oh, thank heavens. All right, so let's begin. I'm going to begin by introducing to you Anne Horrigan-Dixon, who has been sort of the powerhouse behind my involvement in this anyway, because she's going to make me a boiled fruitcake. So I'm putty in her hands. So, Anne, welcome, and welcome again to all those people watching, and thanks for sitting through that chaos.
Welcome and hello. My name's Anne Horrigan-Dixon. I live in North Fitzroy, and I've been very fortunate to become involved with the most wonderful group of people, which we met through the Queen's Parade Amendment, and I met all of them in 2019. And we formed a group called the Queen's Parade Heritage Planning and Traders Group. So why are we actually having this meeting, and why are we going to all of this effort? Well, a few weeks ago, when things were completely locked down, I spoke to Anne Coveney from Protect North Fitzroy, who was telling me how worried they were at trying to engage with this huge, massive C269. In layman's language, it is a rewrite of the whole of the Yarra planning scheme. There's 9 sections to it, and it is a totally overwhelming document. She said, we need people to put in submissions. And I said, I have no idea how to do it or where to start. I have no idea what I would say that would be meaningful in any way other than writing, I want to protect heritage, I want to protect certain things, but it would be meaningless. So I know what I love about my neighbourhood, and I know what I love about my local shopping village, which is the North Fitzroy village. And I also know what I don't want to have happen in Yarra, because Yarra is a really special city and we need to protect the heritage. We need to protect our trees, our waterways, and especially our landmarks. But how do we, as ordinary residents, actually be able to write a submission in to the planners? Now, Glenn McCullum is going to explain the system to you, but basically this is a form of democracy where you, residents, get to write a submission, and we are going to help you do that by explaining this planning scheme in simple language, and we will have a how-to guide and a submission template or forms to assist you, and they will be up on the local websites. So I know what I don't want in my neighbourhood, and most of you do as well, but we're going to help you get that onto the paper so that our planners and our councillors, and most importantly, the ultimate group, the planning panel who will assess this, will understand it. When we were involved with the Queen's Parade Amendment, there were 400 really excellent written submissions that came from ordinary people in the neighbourhood, and they were able to say things which had a powerful impact, and we got a much greater outcome than we as residents ever expected, and it was thanks to those 400 people. So we formed a group in April 2019 called the Queen's Parade Heritage Planning and Traders Group. I was so inspired. I went, and I didn't want to go to this particular night, which was an oral presentation where each person was allowed to speak for 2 minutes about their submission on Amendment C231, the Queen's Parade Amendment. I was absolutely blown away. I was so inspired by the people that made presentations that I thought if we could all get together and join together, we could be really, really powerful. And that's what we've done. We have never done anything like this before. Our group was always led by Protect North Fitzroy, who had the big meetings up at the North Fitzroy Library in the big room. But now we're going to try something new, and we need to acknowledge the Yarra Residents Collection, especially Adam, for assisting us to do this. This is up now on YouTube. You can get your friends to watch it. The councillors can watch it. The planning department can watch it. Anybody can watch it. So who is in our group? You will know some of these groups because you will have received notices from them. We have Protect North Fitzroy, the 3068 group, Fitzroy Residents Association, Collingwood Historical Society, Save Queen's Parade, which looks after the high-rise triangle, and Rescue Queen's Parade, which has been very, very active in saving the Queen's Parade shopping centre. But the glue that holds all of this together is the ordinary residents who aren't experts but have networks in the community and are really, really committed to making our City of Yarra a great place into the future. So tonight the speakers are coming from the different groups, and they're going to explain areas which they think are really important. They're going to explain it in a language an ordinary person can understand, and it's going to assist you in putting in your submission. Your submission, which will be an email, is really, really important. We're relying on you. Our strategic planning office at the City of Yarra have done a fantastic job, but they are not the community. We are the community, and we need to speak up, and we need to say exactly what we want. speakers will be talking about the how-to guide, but I want to explain that it is very, very detailed and very complex. But by you making certain statements and putting in small groups of words, you can make a difference. And in C231, with regard to the shopping centre, a couple of words were blue sky. People wanted to see the blue sky above the top of their heritage precinct. And it wasn't a small group, it was a huge group. And that really turned the planning panel around. So tonight, people are going to talk about the terminology. They're going to explain certain areas, but I'm just going to give you an example of what made a difference and really engaged me with this. Somebody said to me, how would you feel if you had a development being built next to your local park, which could overshadow it for most of the day in the middle of winter, so you'd only have a couple of hours of sunlight? And I was horrified. I thought, why would you let that happen? So they're the things we are going to change around when you put your submissions in. What does mandatory height mean? What do you think mid-rise means? I thought it meant like 4 stories. Apparently it means 8 to 14 stories. Do you really want that in your activity centres? People are going to talk about the importance of our commercial shopping strips. And one of the great things that we have is the term fine grained. They're small shops, small businesses. We've got a variety of businesses that cater to our whole community. And my neighbourhood village is in danger of losing a lot. Since I came here, I've lost probably 5 different types of shops that were there. They've all been made into one big shopping area. And people love the mixture. And the heart of our community is our small shops and the shopkeepers who bring a heart to the villages. And we need to protect that. Landmarks is really important, and other people are going to speak about that. There's only 12 landmarks that are currently in the scheme. We know that we've got many more than that, and you know what they are, so we're going to ask you to help us. So all of the speakers tonight are volunteers. They are so dedicated. They have put in hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, and we hope that we will inspire you to be able to write great submissions. And if you need a hand, people will tell you how we can help you. We want to help you to participate. We have Kristen Stegley from the National Trust speaking tonight, and she's going to say how important it is to be there and stand up and be counted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne. That's a wonderful introduction to the event this evening. So I'm going to begin by inviting David Young to be our first speaker. And David, just a little brief CV and whatever other information you think is relevant before you get off and running.
Hello, everybody. David Young's my name. I'm a heritage consultant. My particular patch in heritage is actually at the back end of the process. I work on materials like stone and bricks and mortar and the physical aspects of repairing old buildings. I am not at the front end of the process, which is what we're talking about this evening, but I do have some understanding of that because I'm active in the professional body called Australia ICOMOS, who are the custodians of a thing called the Borough Charter, which some of you will have heard of and which we'll be talking some more about. So my task this evening is to tell you a little bit about the proposed heritage policy, which has the number 15.03-1L. And that policy is going to replace the existing 2202, which is entitled Development Guidelines for Sites Subject to the Heritage Overlay. And excuse me, I've got about 5 headings that I want to talk about. Firstly, objectives. A policy needs objectives. Objectives are important statements of what outcomes we want the policy to achieve. Now, whereas the current 2202 has 9 objectives, the proposed new policy has none. These days we talk about donuts. There's a donut number of objectives in the new heritage policy. This is because the parallel state policy has an objective, and so the local policy should not have any. At least that's according to a state guidance document on how to develop new local policies. And that's the understanding as to why the draft policy that's been exhibited has no objectives. Now, that would be more acceptable if the objective in the state policy were adequate, but it's not. The sole objective is to ensure the conservation of places of heritage significance. Some of us have been working on the revising the exhibited policy, and we've come up so far with 4 objectives which we think better explain what we want to achieve with the policy. But the fundamental point is that the proposed policy needs a series of objectives. We'll be circulating draft material which will show people what we want, what we're recommending out of each of these things. The next point is about strategies. Strategies spell out how the objectives of the policy are to be achieved. For a policy about heritage, one might reasonably expect there to be a good slab of heritage conservation strategies up front. Yet there is but one sentence in the proposed policy, and it's placed under a heading, not about heritage conservation, but about new development, alterations and additions. So the message here is that the proposed policy should include a series of strategies for heritage conservation, which should be placed before strategies about alterations and new developments. And again, we've written some words about this, which we'll make available. Next topic is language and definitions. Like many disciplines, the heritage profession uses a specific language to ensure clarity of intent. Terms like conservation, restoration, reconstruction and adaptation all have specific meanings and are drawn from a document called the Borough Charter, which is a set of principles that guide heritage conservation practice in Australia. The proposed policy uses these terms, but does not do so in a consistent manner. The policy should use conservation language, and it should use it consistently throughout. So that everyone can be clear about the meanings of terms, the policy should include a list of definitions. Definitions are also needed because the professional use of terms often differs from those in common use. The existing policy, the one that's to be replaced, has definitions. The proposed policy at present has no definitions, and we're arguing that it should have. And a majority of inner Melbourne councils have lists of definitions in their heritage policy, and so should Yarra. Turning now to the structure of the document. Under strategies in Yarra's proposed policy, there are a series of headings, some of which are about conservation, including reconstruction, painting and surface treatments, some of which are new works, demolition, new development, alterations, additions, some of which are type specific, residential, commercial and former industrial places. And finally, some are specific issues about subdivision, services, equipment, roof terraces and so on. One of the concerns about the current 2202 has been a lack of clarity about which provisions apply to which place, which type of place. And this has been used, arguably incorrectly, to allow more relaxed controls on industrial and commercial places than apply to residential places. We need to avoid this happening again, and so the new policy should make clear which provisions apply to which type of places and which are specific to particular types. To solve this means rearranging the document to pull all the general provisions forward to be followed by the specific type provisions later. Now, a clumsily long sentence is required to explain all that, but so far there seems little option. And as already noted, the strategies for conservation should be at the beginning of the document, since this is about heritage conservation. The final point I want to make tonight is about guidelines. Even with a list of definitions, the policy will still be pretty opaque to most in the community. And so there's a need for a plain English set of guidelines to support the new policy. The guidelines should be aimed at building owners, their advisors, architects and builders, and be well illustrated, as many will understand visually where words may confuse. While the guidelines should inform how the policy should be applied, they will not be formally part of the policy. They'll be an additional document, or should be an additional document, available to all and everyone involved. They're the topics I wish to cover. You'll hear about the heritage policy from others this evening, and we'll look forward to your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And now we'd like to introduce you, Glenn McCallum. And Glenn, as we did ask with David, would you mind just briefing us a little bit about who you are and what a fabulous person you are?
Thanks, Rod. Well, in fact, I've actually got a presentation, and so I might actually go straight to the presentation, which actually covers some of that material. So let's see how. Whoops. Sorry. Let's see how we go. Whoops. Just bear with me.
We're bearing.
Okay, so you should have that presentation. Yes? All right. Yes? Yep. Okay, so my name's Glenn McCallum. I'm from Protect Fitzroy North, Inc. We're a residents group pushing for appropriate development outcomes. We've been involved in a couple of planning amendments, of which this is an example, Fitzroy Gasworks and Queen's Parade Amendment C269. And we obviously sometimes contest development applications if they seem inappropriate. So my qualifications are none whatsoever, just a resident, really. So what's all this about? The Yarra planning scheme is basically the rule book that directs and guides planning decisions both at council and at VCAT. So everything you like or don't like about planning has a foundation in the Yarra planning scheme. So every council schemes are being rewritten at the moment as part of a state government initiative. So why is it important? Well, like I said, it controls all planning decisions. Only changes once a decade or more. So speak now or live with the outcomes for a very long time. So public submissions are crucial to having a community voice. Otherwise, the loudest voices left will be the developers. You can guarantee that. So why must we act now? Public submissions on this Amendment C269 closed Friday, December the 4th at 5 p.m. But the process has a lot more steps to run. And your best chance of remaining in the game is to make a submission at this stage, however small, because if you wish to make a submission subsequently, only people who've already submitted will typically get to do that. Okay, so here are the stages of a planning scheme amendment. This is true of all of them. So there are 6 stages in all. We are towards the end of stage 2. So the minister has already decided that, you know, what Yarra's put up is worth exhibiting. We're now towards the end of the exhibition period when you're able to make a written submission. Now, there is a period coming up which will run for probably months where the council consider submissions and synthesise it all into something that goes to the planning panel hearing. Now, the planning panel hearing hears from every interested party, residents, you name it, and it's not really like VCAT. It's actually quite a, I think actually probably an uplifting thing to attend. I've been inspired every time I've been to a planning panel, and then the planning panel essentially hear from everybody, you know, no matter what their background is, and they generate a report, and that report is considered by the minister, who and his department, who can potentially change it, approve it, or reject the amendment. Now, this is a change to the planning scheme, so I think it's pretty much got to proceed in some form. And then once it's approved, that becomes the new planning scheme. So why a rewrite? The format's changed, so they're attempting to simplify it, although you'd perhaps wonder when you come to have a look. But that's nothing on the officers, that's just the nature of planning. The existing scheme is 1,200 pages, roughly. It's virtually impossible for lay people to understand what the rules are, as anyone who's dealt with a development application can probably agree with. It's fantastic for lawyers, developers and consultants. So what does C269 cover? Well, most of the planning policy is actually at the state level, so that's not something that Yarra controls. C269 really only covers policy that's Yarra specific in some way. And this is all headlined by the municipal planning strategy. So it's one of the frontmost documents, and that frames the remainder of it. So don't worry, there's a fair bit of material, but it's not a bad start. Most of the documents are innocuous. We're here to help you to navigate which aspects might affect you, so you can assess and comment for yourselves. So the backdrop to all planning really is Plan Melbourne 2017-2050, or it's a very, very important document, which is the backdrop that is behind part of this. It's a state level document guiding all planning schemes and should be guiding C269 also. It seeks to balance growth with other considerations like heritage, valued character of neighbourhoods, etc. A foundation concept of Plan Melbourne is the 20-minute neighbourhood. So a 20-minute neighbourhood, the idea is that you should be able to handle most of your daily needs within 20 minutes of your home. That's working, shopping, recreation. And that essentially is seen as around about an 800-metre radius. So that's essentially a 20-minute walk, or if you're a power walker, maybe you can get a bit further. But anyway, they've picked an 800-metre number. So, and the idea is this is all supported by good transport. Now, this is where we get into zoning. Well, in fact, I'll go back. The concept of a 20-minute neighbourhood is important because it means that all of these things, accommodation, shopping, recreation, have to be dealt with within 800 metres. But that's an enormous distance in Yarra. The reality is, under a 20-minute neighbourhood, there is no imperative to have to build on the top of, particularly valued heritage shops in order to achieve this outcome. As long as as all of these things can be dealt with close enough, that addresses the problem. And that's what happened with Queen's Parade. Essentially, the panel said, well, look, we've got space nearby for very high-rise development up to or more than 17 stories. So that will deal with the need for accommodating growth. And that means that we can still protect the heritage shopping strip and the fine-grained retail that people value. So I'll just explain what zones are, because a lot of people don't understand this. So most of Yarra is residentially zoned, so it's neighbourhood or general residential zone, largely protected from development anyway. And developable land is in and around shopping strips and ex-industrial sites. But ex-industrial sites need rezoning for residential uses. So it's easier to develop in a shopping strip because most have commercial 1 zoning, which still permits residential uses. And there is the problem. That's why there is often so much pressure to redevelop a shopping strip as with residential uses, even though it doesn't seem to make much sense. So if we talk about C269 and shopping strips, C269 encourages residential development in shopping strips in a mid-rise format, which can impact the viability of shops. So it can reduce the amount of space you've got for the shops, for their frontages, and the amount of floor space they have at the ground plane, because you've got to add lifts, you've got to do all sorts of things to make it possible to have this accommodation and car stackers and what have you. And remember that mid-rise, according to C269, can be up to 14 stories. So I'll do a bit of jargon busting at this point. So mid-rise originally started around 5 or 6 stories in the previous planning scheme. It was reinterpreted over the years of the operation of that scheme as 8, 10 or even 12 stories by VCAT. And it's unlikely that the current concept of 14 stories as being the giddy limit of mid-rise will hold. It's a developer's feast out there. Now to another bit of terminology, activity centres. You'll see this all through the document. It basically means shopping and commercial strips. 3 categories: local activity centres, neighbourhood activity centres and major activity centres. A local activity centre is basically a very small shopping strip, not much more than a cluster of shops and businesses. Some of residents' daily requirements, milk bars, takeaways, not typically used by non-locals. Spenceley Street shops, Clifton Hill West would be an example. And there's a photo, to just give you a flavour of what those look like. Neighbourhood activity centres are larger shopping strips able to satisfy most, if not all, of residents' daily needs. Still locally focused, some draw for non-locals, but not massive. Queen's Parade shops is a classic example of that. And just in case you didn't know what they look like, there they are. So major activity centres, those satisfy all typical daily needs, plus fairly extensive niche retail, significant draw card for non-locals and locals alike, and Brunswick Street Fitzroy is an archetypal major activity centre. So another concept they have in C269 is this concept of differing extents of change. Activity centres and ex-industrial precincts are divided up into differing extent of change zones. So local and neighbourhood activity centres are more protected from large amounts of change than major activity centres, as you'd probably expect. The terms they're using are minimal change, incremental change, moderate change, and high change. It's starting to sound like the 3 bears here. Anyway, need to look in the Yarra housing strategy to find the definitions of all that. Minimal change largely applies to residential areas, where state rules restrict change, perhaps dual occupancy, more or less what it says. And this is the section of the document that explains that. You have to refer to another document to see it, but basically it's saying more or less what I said. And minimal change areas are not, they don't prohibit development, but we renovate all the time, I'm sure. But it's got to be fairly, low key and, within character. So incremental change is some residential areas, local activity centres, low-rise neighbourhood activity centres with sensitive heritage. That's more supposed to be townhouse-sized developments and perhaps small apartment blocks where you've got a vacant site. So that's basically, as I said, these are low, very incremental, as the word says, additions to existing areas. Let's probably move on. Moderate change. That's less sensitive parts of neighbourhood activity centres and major activity centres. Heading towards mid-rise, which can be pretty big, as I've observed. Mixed use, infill and shop top development, according to the document. And that can lead to problems, as I've outlined, and conflicts with retail if not done carefully. So, they show the example of the Dimmies development. Now, that's actually of a pretty significant size. So, but that's what they're kind of talking about in terms of moderate change. And there's some more detail there. I'll be providing these slides later. So high change. This is true high rise. So ex-industrial sites, major activity centres where there aren't the sensitivities, not heritage, no residential abuttals. True high rise, greater than 14 stories potentially. Strategic redevelopment sites. So if the top end of Queen's Parade, the discretionary height limit is 17 stories, for example, and there's already an application in for 22. So, which Yarra incidentally has refused, but it's being appealed to VCAT. So anyway, that gives you a flavour as to where high change can, it kind of ends up. So that's 8% of the Yarra area. So what can I do as a resident? Well, you can review the material at yarraplanningscheme.com.au. Yarra have provided an excellent site explaining the amendment. Make a submission by Friday, December the 4th. We'll publish material to help, including this. So I just wanted to run through some particular things to look at. Check the maps. 16.012L, location of residential development. Does it make sense? So this is, which are the high change, moderate change, incremental change? Does it make, look at the areas around you, the places you understand. Does it make sense? Are there anomalies? Because mistakes can be made, and people can get it wrong. And you may have, and those are legitimate views. Are there any apparent errors? So some other items. Check the municipal planning strategy, the strategic framework plan map, which is horrible. It needs lots of zooming. It's incredibly hard to read. I'm sorry about that, but that's how it is. It shows where the activity centres are, the types of activity centres, and what their boundaries are. There are definitely mistakes in there, it's important to sort of reality check whether or not what the planners are saying makes sense to you. So back to activity centres, there's a detailed section 1103-1L on activity centres, and that has descriptive text about all the activity centres around Yarra, and you should check what it says about your local neighbourhood or major activity centres, and does it make sense? Do you actually agree with it? Are there aspects missing? Are the heritage important landmarks or views not listed? And while we're on landmarks, 1501-2L lists all of the landmarks and important views to them which are protected at all of Yarra level. Are there important landmarks or views to landmarks missing? Really, I mean, local people need to kind of, have a say on this, because they're essentially experts have been wheeled in, but, experts don't know everything. Anything else you want to consider? There are many other aspects which may interest or concern you when you come to read the policies. Feel free to respond to anything you like. We'll provide notes covering other areas or aspects you might want to look closer at. And what should you say? Well, say what you think, but try to be civil. You can speak from personal experience or look at things at a more technical level, but both are effective, both are powerful. So what's going to be ineffective? Talking about excessive population growth or immigration, which are federal matters. I have to keep saying this, it comes up over and over again. Talking about how infrastructure, schools, transport can't cope. These are state matters, not council. Yarra doesn't define its own growth targets. It just has to deal with what it's told it's got to deal with. So what's more effective? Speaking about personal lived experience. That is powerful and it's hard to refute, and it certainly is very, very effective at the panel. And provide supporting evidence where possible. So photos, any extra information you can provide, that's again very powerful, because the experts will seem, very impressive, but they can't bring their own facts. So some parting thoughts. DDOs and structure plans are the most effective tools we've got currently to manage growth without going to VCAT. There are many places you care about which aren't covered by such controls and just won't be, because they can't be created in the time frame, or they're simply just not on the roadmap for having such controls. C269 still needs to provide better surety about what can be expected in those places. There are maybe other ways. City of Melbourne and others are starting to use alternative mechanisms such as plot ratios to manage growth expectations without either constantly going to VCAT or trying to define DDOs for everything. That sort of thing is too late for C269, but I certainly agree that we need an alternative to the VCAT merry-go-round. Your residents groups are here to help, so lots of material will be published online for you to refer to and help you, go through the material. And thank you.
And thank you very much, Glenn. That was really quite extraordinary. Those people don't know what they're up against. Now I'd like to introduce to you Terry Knott. And again, Terry, if you could just give a few words of introduction and away you go.
Thanks, Rod, and thanks, Glenn. That was really good. I think, Glenn, if you'd been lecturing at Melbourne University when I was studying architecture, I would have got a much better handle on what planning was all about. My qualifications, well, in the 60s, I was playing drums with Peter McCutcheon when Rod was on stage, cracking all the jokes, giving drum rolls and cymbal crashes. Then I finally graduated in architecture. I've been practicing in Melbourne ever since. I'm a member of the City of Yarra Heritage Advisory Committee, and I was a member of the City of Fitzroy Urban Conservation Advisory Committee before that. Excuse me. Just a couple of things. I picked up on what the other people were talking about before I go on. The borough charter was mentioned. Probably some people don't know that borough is a town in South Australia. It's not an abbreviation for something else. And I think that at that convention, or following that convention somewhere, and I can be corrected, is when the borough charter was signed up. Is that right, David Young? Yep. The other one, I'm not sure whether Glenn explained what DDOs were. Did you explain that, Glenn?
No.
Okay, so it's a design development overlay. It's not a DODA. Okay. And a design development overlay is a specific piece of planning relating and controlling a certain area of in regard to buildings and other built objects. I think so. My particular passion is built form. I'm still a practicing architect, and I'm completely frustrated with the City of Yarra's attitude in regard to the application of heritage in all the developments that are coming before council at the moment, and specifically the larger developments that are coming onto former industrial and former commercial sites. And one of my main concerns is that there's not enough attention being paid to the street verandas, and particularly in the former Collingwood areas, where nearly all of the verandas were removed during the 50s, I think. We only need to look at Queen's Parade between North Fitzroy and Clifton Hill, and you'll see that on the North Fitzroy side, there's probably 1/3 of the verandas remaining, and on the Clifton Hill side, which was the City of Collingwood, there are no verandas remaining. Parts of Richmond have a lot of verandas remaining, but I'm not sure about the actual specifics as to what the City of Richmond did with their removal of verandas, but I'm well aware that Collingwood was active their engineering department was very active in removing all verandas. So my passion is to see as many of these reinstated as possible. The reinstatement of these will not only benefit heritage, the comfort in the streets and everything, but it'll actually add to the lower carbon emissions from buildings inside where there are large windows facing west, for example, in Queen's Parade, where all the businesses on the Clifton Hill side in Queen's Parade in the late afternoon have to run air conditioning units because they don't have any cross ventilation. They've basically got toilet block and staff rooms at the back and large glazed areas at the front facing towards the west sun. So it's specifically in relation to the advertised document, I've signalled out a couple of, well, actually three major items in relation to verandas, and I'm not sure, but are they able to be put up? Thank you very much for whoever did that. That was great. And apologies for the late sending of that this afternoon. It's always been difficult for me to understand how we were going to actually disseminate the information that we all have to the public about this, how to contribute and to comment on the advertised document. And so I noticed that the Collingwood History Society on their landmarks comments have actually used the same format that I've used. So I thought this was a reasonably easy way to do it, rather than to do crossing out words and putting them in red colours and everything. So I've used italics and bold. But so if you look at the first box up the top, it's just simply a matter of actually adding in verandas in this section of new developments and alterations under 1503. They don't actually have verandas in there as one of the elements. And so I've described it as under the seventh bullet point. This has been the actual lack of numbering of sections has been a major concern for all of the people in our little group reviewing and commenting on the advertised document. And you can see what would happen here when you get to somewhere like a VCAT meeting and you're saying under the seventh bullet point. That's the sort of reference there'll be, because there's no proper numbering system within 1503 and within most of the other clauses. So that's a comment that I would like to have in there. And I don't think there'll be any problem in adopting that from the panel's point of view and from the City of Yarra. And next one is a total confusion amongst between the commercial and former industrial places, commercial heritage places and former industrial heritage places. And because, once again, with lack of a numbering system and a lack of hierarchy within the document, we've got these three different statements following each other with just a gap in paragraphs. And my understanding is that the second two are actually subsections of the first one. And I think this whole section needs to be rewritten so that there's clarity about the overarching comments in the first section, which is commercial and former industrial heritage places, is adopted and incorporated in the second and third ones. And in particular, I want to see a sentence along the lines of require a simple contemporary veranda design consistent with the form and style of adjoining verandas to be added in. At the moment, the way it stands, it's more or less assuming in the document that there will never be a veranda on a former industrial heritage building. And I'm sure that this would cause a lot of grief in the future in planning consistency and arguments as to what's industrial and what's commercial in the past heritage buildings in Yarra. So the next one is restoration and reconstruction. It's simply a matter of adding a sentence from the previous clause 22 in the existing planning scheme. And you can read it there for yourselves. I presume you've all got it up in front of you. It's pretty straightforward. So I'll move on now on to the last of my three sections that I've commented on. And this one is trees, landscapes, parks and gardens. And my main concern here is that this particular heading here, trees, landscape, parks and gardens, basically only deals, well, for 90% of it deals with trees. And the rest of it doesn't address the issues of all the heritage elements that we have within our parks in the City of Yarra. And well, I haven't included rotundas and the obvious things like the grandstand in the Edinburgh Gardens, but I've noted here the things that are absent from it, and that they include a lot of the elements from the Inner Circle railway line. And just as an aside, I was the City of Fitzroy's representative on the Inner Circle railway line working group, together with other Brunswick and Melbourne many years ago. For example, in this area, there are steel and timber sleeper running tracks and points and station remnants, weigh-bridges, and there's a weigh-bridge, an electric stanchion, and an original railway line, which the bike path follows for most of its route from top of Carlton across to the old North Fitzroy goods yard. This section should also include protection and retention of heritage streetscapes elements, which include gas lamps, road signs, bluestone culverts, gutters, bluestone crossings, and laneways, pavings. At the moment, the City of Yarra has a non-working process, if you could call it even a process, whereby decisions are being made about all of these items in this last paragraph I've highlighted here. What's happening in the moment is some of us members from the Heritage Advisory Committee have been putting our hands up to give free advice on different aspects of engineering infrastructure that is being designed by the City of Yarra in-house and their consultants. And I see this as a completely unworkable, unfair way to address these design issues, and particularly the effects that they'll have on heritage outcomes. So that's it from me, Rod. Yep. So you want me to give you a drum roll and a crash, or what?
If you wouldn't mind, on your marks, get set, go.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Terry. And now we'd like to invite Virginia Noonan to, oh, hang on, where's Virginia? We don't have Virginia, do we?
I'm
Oh, there
here.
you are. Sorry, Virginia, I couldn't see
That's
you.
all right.
You
Hi,
disappeared.
thanks, Rod. I'm Virginia Noonan. My claim to fame is doing the research on all the heritage shops in Queen's Parade from the Crown Land subdivision to present day, which has helped to inform a number of the strategies and campaigns and everything that have been happening in the last 18 months, 2 years. So that was, it's been very beneficial, and it's an ongoing project. But I'm speaking tonight about laneways and public realm. As we all know, the laneways we have are very old. Most of them around Queen's Parade precinct date back to 1879, and in Richmond, Fitzroy and Collingwood, they go back a lot earlier. They're 3 metres wide, some of them small, some of them are 6 metres wide, and they're covered in bluestone. Laneways originally were used for waste collection and access to the back of the shops and houses. The current laneways, especially the smaller laneways, are generally neglected by council, and there is not likely to be any more laneways, so we must protect what we have. The current laneways for the current people living on the backs of the laneways, they're still being used by the local people to get into the back of their properties, because they have, as you know, a lot of the houses are joined together, and the only way you can get access to them is down the laneway and go into the back. And they're also used for tradespeople to get into the back, and most importantly for people, shopkeepers, they're used for delivery of goods and access to the backs of their shops. So today, even though they're not used for collection of waste matter, they are still very important to the community of City of Yarra. Attachment 110501, laneway management, in the documents that have been sent out are available on Council's website. To let you know, in 2019, Council prepared a draft management policy in relation to laneways, and there's clear recognition by Council that the public use of the laneway and of the public use of the laneways, and they should covers current laneways, laneways that are being closed off by residents, and laneways not being used, etc. So that's draft policy, is looking at, well, what do we do with our laneways? What should be protected? What should we just say, well, okay, they've now not being used. They can be, the residents who are closed off can actually take over control of them. But at the moment, these laneways are public land. They belong to the community and the people of City of Yarra. They don't belong to the City of Yarra itself. They don't belong to the shopkeeper or the residents specifically. They belong to us as a whole. Attachment 1132, it's called the Municipal Planning Strategy, and it talks about community infrastructure and speaks about open spaces and public open spaces. The council describes laneways as a network of laneways and small streets, historic boulevard streets and laneways, places that should be protected and enhance the built form, character and function of streets and laneways as a feature of Yarra's urban structure, and as an area where the development should be avoided that projects over public realm, including a laneway. Attachment 1137 5.2.2 talks about protecting and conserving the views of heritage places from the public realm, except for, and this is the crucial part about all of this, except for laneways. So laneways have actually been ruled out as part of the public realm, even though they are public land. This is critical. Our laneways should be recognised as part of the public realm in order to protect the heritage of the old buildings and to ensure the laneways are properly maintained. I believe this is currently a hit and miss situation. The council wants to embrace the laneways for public use, but not recognise the laneways as part of the public realm. And they're developing on the land around laneways. There's an incident that's been happening in C2 off Queen's Parade at 390A, where the developer wants to actually owns the land. It's like an island, partial island site, and they want to put townhouses there. But it's been a big struggle, and at the moment it's been to VCAT, and the current plans have been rejected. But it's still land that sits on commercial site and is open to development. But the effect on the laneway and the users of the laneway and the residents and the shopkeepers could be quite significant. Attachment 1138, one of the heritage reports states that laneway corners sites also provide three-dimensional views, but the urban form may be more compact and laneway edge building may be present. If laneways are not part of the public realm, what happens to heritage building sidewalls that are on laneways if laneways are not part of that public realm? Planning Panel Victoria in its glossary states that laneways are part of the public realm. A City of Yarra at C231 hearing in 2019 stated the laneways were not part of the public realm, and there was no ability for those involved in this to actually argue this issue at the hearing. It came up on the last day, just before lunch, without any warning. So it's an issue that needs to be addressed in this process. Other councils, such as Port Phillip, embrace laneways and see them as part of the public realm. So why not City of Yarra? I ask you in your submission, which has to be lodged with council by 4th of December, laneways should be part of the public realm to protect the heritage of the old buildings and ensure that laneways are properly maintained. Remember, public laneways are owned by the ratepayers of City of Yarra. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Virginia. And now we move on to Ian White. And Ian, welcome. Thank you for being here, and just a little background and away you go.
Need to unmute.
Down the bottom left.
Okay,
there you are.
Thank you, Rod. I'm a heritage planner, but just because I'm a planner specialising in heritage and things like heritage policies, doesn't mean I've found it any easier than anyone else trying to get around this document. It's been quite a nightmare, really. And I'm very grateful to a non-planner explaining it all to me, I can tell you. That's referring to Glenn, of course. Some of you may have seen this particular document. I'll see if I can share it. Here we are. Now, is that shared? Oh. Is it? I should be able to see that document. What's happened? Oh. Can you see a shared document? Can people see this document or not?
There it is. It's up now, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is certainly pretty daunting. There's all the list of the state and the local policies. But as Greg's pointed out to you, it's not as bad as all that, because we can only influence the ones that are printed in pale blue. So there's not that many of them really, but there's a way of trying to sort this out. I thought actually, because I'm really coming at this as a member of the Royal Historical Society of Victoria's Heritage Committee, I've come to this issue with a particular heritage focus, rather than particularly cultural heritage focus, rather than thinking about natural systems and biodiversity and more equitable, affordable housing, public housing, and so on and so forth. But I also think that it's kind of useful to approach this from the point of, well, what I've tried to say is, what do most residents living in the City of Yarra want their planning scheme policies to do for them? And I reckon what we're primarily concerned with is conserving heritage and preserving our amenity. Those are really the two things. So it seemed to me that the obvious starting point would be the what they call theme number 15, which is the built environment and heritage theme. So I went through each one of these, each one of the blue policies in that particular theme. And there's some actually, sometimes there's some quite good stuff in there. There's a good recognition for how development needs to respect heritage when you've got new development going up beside a heritage place. That's new, and it's really some very good policy. But the main problems arise with the actual heritage policy itself, and David has taken, well, actually David and Terry have taken you through quite a few of the changes which I've been working through with together with Janet Taylor. So so rather than try and confront the whole thing, it's not bad if you pick a point of view. Also, if you're more interested in natural systems and biodiversity and all that sort of stuff, by all means, just pick the bits that you're really interested in, that you've got something that you feel strongly about and you can express it. You don't have to try and cover the whole thing. But having said that, it can get a bit tricky because there are other policies which impinge on the built environment and heritage provisions, or the heritage provisions, in a way that you wouldn't quite think. For example, under the housing policy, it classifies the Queen's Parade neighbourhood activities area as a place of moderate change, which really means substantial change. And since the panel report came out limiting building heights to 3 stories throughout most of the centre, that's really out of pace with what's happened subsequently and needs to be corrected. So there are things in the other policies which, fortunately, quite a few other people have picked up. You can't just really, it's a good idea to be able to look a bit to one side or the other, but I would recommend that you concentrate on the bit that you're really interested in. You do not have to be comprehensive. We'll have plenty of people will be, well, a few of us will be trying to be comprehensive in our field, but certainly my approach is to concentrate on the built heritage, take account of the bits and pieces elsewhere that might affect the built heritage, and make that's the submission I'll put in. If you're more interested in preserving the environment of the river corridors, then I suggest you go and concentrate on that, and that'll be terrific. The other thing I would like to say is that, and the officers, in the meeting with the officers who put this together, emphasize that you want to be as detailed as possible. You really need to want to look at what you may not like what's there, but you really should be able to try and come up with an alternative, rather than just say you don't like it, it should be better. It's not. Sometimes that's not too helpful. Sometimes it needs to be said, and if you don't have a suggestion, well, fair enough. But if you can't come, one of the things we learned in the Queen's Parade campaign was when we were lobbying the councillors individually, they would turn around to us and they'd say, yeah, well, you've told us what you don't like, but why don't you tell us what you want? So in fact, we went away and had a bit of a brainstorm, and we came up with an alternative plan with alternative provisions for DDOs. And I think that was really quite convincing to the panel in the end, that we weren't just coming along and protesting, but we were coming along and saying it should be done this way. And you've heard David earlier talking about how he's drafted the policies that will that should be in the scheme. You know, the panel or the council officers, or subsequently the panel, really can just pick up that set of policies and say, Bonza, that's been prepared by an expert in that area, and we can just drop it into the scheme. So that would be my final piece of advice, I think.
Oh, that was
quick and simple. So thanks, Rod.
very abrupt. Thank you very, very much, Ian. Now, we have 4 speakers remaining, and we've been going now for about an hour and 10 minutes. So I've unilaterally decided we're going to have a 5-minute interval. There you go. And we'll come back in 5 minutes to hear the rest of our speakers and to put to them the questions that you've sent to us. So enjoy the interval. Peanuts, lollies, popcorn, get your Dixie ice cream, get your Dixie ice cream. Read all about it, get your Dixie ice cream.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello?
There you go. Sorry, I'm just unmuted. Okay.
I can see you now.
Oh yeah, I've just come back in the room.
Oh,
But I've been down making a cup of coffee.
that's good. Can everybody see you?
Oh, hang on. There we go. And I go to, oh my goodness me, look at that. You're on mute, and Rod, turn on, but on mute and mute and mute, and I don't understand any of that. Anyway, I'm not on mute anymore, I hope. Okay. Wow. Mute, mute, unmute, mute. Oh, I did a bad job of that. Never mind. Okay. Well, I think it's time to start again. Okay, well, we're still waiting on people. Still waiting on people. There we go. Oh, it looks like everybody's back. Okay, I'm sorry, there's a bit of chaos there. All right. It's been nothing but chaos. And do you think I've done this before? Okay, well, I'd like now to introduce you Chris Goodman, who will introduce himself. So, Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Rod. I'm the president of the 3068 group, which is a resident group that's from the area of 3068, Clifton Hill and North Fitzroy. We have been going since the late 1990s, and we originally fought the demolition of the House of the Gentle Bunyip, which wasn't protected by the planning scheme, but was eventually protected by people power, and is now still there and provides affordable housing. So I just want to say thank you to David and Terry and Glenn for some excellent presentations. David's on heritage was excellent, and I support all of those changes. And Glenn gave us the big picture. But at my peril, I'm going to ignore Glenn's advice and start by talking about what just happened. So in 2006, the population, according to the planning scheme, this document, which is being revised, the earlier document was written in 2006, and there was a population of 70,000 people in Yarra. And that had gone up gradually since 2000, but their prediction then was that there would be 90,000 people by 2031. So that was the prediction in 2006. Well, here we are in 2020, and we've already reached 96,000 people. So we've exceeded our 2031 projection, and they're now predicting it will grow by almost 30,000 from here to 2031. So we'll be up to pretty close to double the population we had in 2006. Now, Glenn correctly said that population is not something that the City of Yarra has much control over. It's a federal and state responsibility, but it is Yarra's responsibility to manage where people are going to live, work and play. And so I would recommend for people daunted by this amendment to start looking at the municipal profile, and that's really the top of it. And if that doesn't describe the city where you want to live in, then that's a good place for you to be providing feedback. So the policy is saying that in planning for growth and change, Yarra is faced with managing the pressure on the valued heritage and the character of Yarra's buildings and streetscapes, its open space, community facilities, infrastructure, natural environment and transport. Pressures on all of those things. But make no mistake about it, this is a policy for growth. And so the other thing that really I noticed reading that municipal profile is that there's one sentence there that says Yarra stands on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. And that's it, nothing more to be said. So if you'd like to see more acknowledgement of the history of this place, then that would be something you could turn your submission to. Now, interestingly, the City of Yarra's planning scheme is trying to present population growth as a sustainability policy. Increased population in the inner city can bring sustainability benefits through more efficient use of existing infrastructure, more people being able to access existing services like recreation, employment opportunities, increased use of sustainable transport. So we love the word sustainable, especially when it's sustainable growth. Now, it's also saying that this will reduce sprawl on Melbourne's fringe, but no evidence has ever been presented that development in the City of Yarra reduces sprawl on Melbourne's fringe. They're both happening, and that's not one or the other. There's something that we're seeing more and more of is high-rise buildings, and these buildings are less sustainable than suburban separate dwellings in the suburbs. Their lifts are running 24/7, all of the lighting, all of the cement, all of the excavation, and all of the goods and services and people being delivered to those buildings. Now, it's interesting that while the City of Yarra is very focused on sustainability, we've actually got some of the least sustainable lifestyles in the world. It's not something that the planning scheme is really making us any more sustainable. It's great that the City of Yarra has some good policies, and they try to put solar power on their roofs and drive electric cars and bikes instead of petrol. But if they're overseeing a planning scheme that is generating this sort of development, it's like the main picture is not being addressed. It's window dressing, and so what we need to do if we're going to have all of this growth is make the buildings much more sustainable, and the construction of those buildings needs to be a lot more sustainable, and the operation of those buildings. And what I see is that there's no real metrics that is going to make this construction boom any more sustainable than the last construction boom. Now, I just want to turn to a few of the bigger picture items that I think are worth discussing rather than the nitty-gritty of policy detail. One of them, though, is the activity centres. And the policies is saying activity centres are a focus of growth in Yarra. Now, again, activity centres were invented in an ivory tower in the city. They looked out across the vast plains and they saw Doncaster shopping town up on a hill and said, aha, let's divide Melbourne up into activity centres. But it never really made any sense in Yarra because really all of Yarra is an activity centre. There's nowhere where there's no activity or low activity in Yarra. Okay, there is some more concentrated activity, but and the other problem where activity centres are a very bad fit for Yarra is that the activity centres were already developed in the 19th century, where the tram routes were and the shopping centres. And so it's very difficult to put more development there. Well, it should be very difficult. In fact, developers are finding it much easier to do that than to put development in large industrial sites. And there's a reason for this. If you're in an activity centre, your development mines the amenity. So you can get to build a building that makes use of all the wonderful cafes, the street life, the heritage, the public transport. Whereas if you go off and build a new place, such as the Alphington development in the old paper mill, or in a development site like the gasworks, you've pretty much got to create your amenity. You've got to make it livable. And developers would much prefer that they didn't have to do that. So what we're seeing is that for 25 years, Yarra has been fighting, or councillors have been fighting the state government, saying we should be directing activity to these industrial sites, former industrial sites and commercial sites. And it sounds like this policy is going to be another step where Yarra's ambitions will be thwarted yet again. I also think another really big issue is biodiversity and trees. We have a wonderful collection of elms in the city of Yarra, the street trees, and also in the parks and gardens. In the parks and gardens, the elms do have some protection, but very often the street trees don't. And any officer can come along and chop down a tree and put in what they think is a more appropriate replacement. But even in Edinburgh Gardens, where there's heritage protection for trees, which is rare, we currently have a proposal to chop down 2 mature elms that are along a path behind the tennis courts. Now, this plan was created by the heritage consultant that's been employed to protect Edinburgh Gardens. And they thought it was a good idea to chop down the trees in order to extend the tennis courts. Now, even when you have the protection, you've still got to wonder whether the policies are being followed. Elsewhere in Yarra, the trees have a lot less protection. However, I should say that Councillor Amanda Stone, for many years, fought to establish a significant tree register. And in 2014, that was finally put up. And we now have a database of 259 trees, of which 72 are on private land. Now, that's pretty good. And I reckon there's a lot more than 259 significant trees in the city of Yarra. But the downside is that these trees don't have any protection under the planning scheme. The planning scheme does not recognise the the significant tree register. So I reckon that's something that should be addressed. Another thing that you'd notice if you looked at satellite images of the city is over the years it's getting less and less green as people change their green backyards into decks or studios or dual occupancies, carports, or just bigger houses. We're getting less and less gardens, and a lot of our green space is in the gardens. And so there's no real metrics. There's no one's really measuring it or tracking it. But if we're going to have double the people, then we're going to end up with a lot less trees, and we need a lot more trees because the urban forest is going to keep us cool. So something you can do is nominate trees to go on that register. And as a community, we should be putting out information to help you to do that, to identify the trees and to say why they are important. But biodiversity is a hugely important area, including linking the few areas of biodiverse habitat we have, such as the parks and gardens, being linked with the creeks and the river. Okay, I'm moving quickly, but I just want to talk about landmarks and tall structures. Landmarks are like queens on a chessboard. They have very far-reaching impacts because their views can be seen. They can be seen from views from a great distance away. Now, back in 2009, somebody, I don't know who, identified 16 landmarks. One of them has since been demolished. It was the Olympic tyre sign above the silos. It's the Porsche place on Victoria Parade. So now we've got a list of 15 landmarks. Nothing is to be added. However, there's a whole new landmark policy, and the aim of the policy is to limit the power of this policy so that it doesn't hinder development. Instead of landmarks being visible as something that you could fight, that development was blocking a landmark, they're being very prescriptive in which views are to be protected. It will only protect the top third of the view to the landmark. Those sorts of things are being brought in, all to assist development. if you've been in the City of Yarra for a long time, you'd know the Yorkshire Brew Tower. If you haven't, you probably wouldn't know it, because unless you live there, it's almost impossible to find it. You can't see it from the public domain anymore because of all the high-rise development that's been built around it. The views were never protected. This brew tower was once the tallest building in the city of Collingwood. Oh, it was perhaps not the tallest building in the city of Collingwood, but it was a tall building in Collingwood. And it's now completely hidden. There's very few views of it left. Now, why was that not added to the landmarks? We don't know. We weren't asked. The Bryant and May Clock Tower is also missing in Richmond. You might think Abbotsford Convent would be a landmark. Apparently it's not. There's also a lot of industrial factories that may be landmarks to you, and we need to identify them and get them on the list. Because if a landmark is not on the list, make no mistake, developers will say at VCAT, and their lawyers will say, this building is not a landmark, and that diminishes its value. Whether it's perceived or actual, it's used a lot at VCAT. So we also would like to see this list as being inclusive rather than exclusive. So just because you're not on the list doesn't mean you're not a landmark. The definition should be turned around. And while nominating landmarks, don't just think about tall structures. Think about the places that have social significance. What are the places that mean something to the community? A heritage place, under the heritage, the Borough Charter that was described so well earlier, social significance is defined as a collective attachment to a place or object that embodies meanings and values that are important to a community or cultural group. The reasons for the attachment may be spiritual, religious, cultural, political, or derived from common experience. So we need to identify the social cultural fabric, heritage fabric, before it's too late. And I thank you for listening and for participating in this amendment.
Good on you. Thank you so much, Chris. And now we go to Anne Coveney. Anne, welcome. Your time in the spotlight has come. Away you go.
Thank you very much, Rod. Okay, so here we go. Right, my name is, wrong one. Yep, we'll bring this one up. Okay, my name is Anne Coveney, and I live in North Fitzroy, and I'm on the committee of Protect Fitzroy North. Like a lot of people, my introduction to all things planning came in the form of a proposal for a major development over my back fence, in our case 16 stories, and it hit my family like a ton of bricks. In the 4 years since, at Protect Fitzroy North, we have spoken to many, many locals who are going through the same experience in different parts of Yarra. So we all need C269 to work, so we stop getting hit by bricks, tons of them. So how do you get your head around this draft C269 and make sense of it and make a contribution? Because as we found out with C231, when everybody makes a contribution, it really does make a difference. So I started with the two big questions for my family approaching this C269. What can be built next door, and what's going to happen to my local shopping strip? Will they keep the village feel? So this is the starting point for my talk. The two main sections that I will be touching on are the activity centres and the housing section, because that's what's going to happen to your house and what's going to happen to your shops. And I'll talk a little bit about sustainability. And the other thing I'll talk a little bit more about is the how-to guide for the submission and some of the logistics about that, because it would be fantastic if as many people as possible put in the submission. I'm going to disagree slightly with some of the previous speakers in saying that please feel free to look as much of the detail as you'd like, but if you speak on your from your heart on your part of Yarra, and you say what you want to see, you want to have, and what you don't want to have, that is entirely reasonable. Our planners, the City of Yarra planners and the panel members, these guys are experts, and they will be able to realise which part of the section, which section of the scheme what you're saying applies to. If you've got an answer for what, if you say what you want, then, and you include, I like buildings like this, and you include a picture. I don't like buildings like this for these reasons, and you include a picture. If you send a copy of the submission to your residents group, we can use that as input. The panel people are very knowledgeable, and they will be able to make sense out of it. So if you don't feel like going through a whole lot of detailed section numbers, you don't have to. When you get to a panel hearing, you are talking to people, and the personal stories have great impact. I have to 110% back up what AHD said at the start. So it's getting a little bit more into the different parts of the scheme. When we did the C239 and we had 400 people who wrote absolutely brilliant submissions, the submissions are available to the public. They're not up on the internet that just any web crawler can find them, but anybody who asks to see your submission, it will be allowed to see it. With C231, there was a folder of printed copies of everybody's submission that was sitting in North Fitzroy Library, and I think there was at the Richmond Town Hall. So the public is allowed to look at your submission. The planners can look at it, councillors can look at it, members of the public can go and read it. And I was just knocked out by the ones that we had for C231. And one of the really strong themes that came through was how much everybody loved their local shopping centre. They loved their local shopping centre because of how it made it feel when they went there, the people that were in the businesses, and walking there, the whole experience. One thing about heritage, the reason it's still here, the heritage that we do have, is because anything that was rubbish has already been pulled down. So what we've got left with is really the good stuff. So if you've got those shopping villages, you've got the heritage there, it's still there for a reason. It's because those shops have been there for easily over 100 years now. Some of them in Queen's Parade are running exactly the same businesses that they were when they were put up. So what to next? So one of the things that needs to come through, if you really do love the village vibe of your local shopping centre, one of the things that the C269 is meant to do is it's meant to articulate a vision for each of the different shopping centres, or as Glenn referred to them as activity centres. If you're local, you can articulate what you want to see in your local village. North Fitzroy Villages is my local village, and in the activity centre section of the planning, the C269, the whole description of what they want to see for North Fitzroy Village is St George's Road, North Fitzroy, support a mix of uses along St George Road, in particular uses which provide the day-to-day needs of the local community. Support development that contributes to attractive pedestrian links to community facilities and Edinburgh Gardens. That's it. So you may not be an expert, but I'm sure you can come up with something better than that about your village. The one for Spencerley Street, Clifton Hill, says, maintain the local convenience retail role of the municipality's local activity centres as shown in the local activity centre plans. Ensure any development respects the character of the centre. The Royal Hotel, I understand, is one of the has got an application for a development. There is nothing in here other than respecting the character that is going to have any chance of keeping the height down. So, so I will put up one, I'm going to do this, I'm going to attempt a screen sharing trick. I'm going to show you one of the a picture of one of the documents people are talking about when they're talking about how high is things going to get around our house. If you're someone, I'm going to try doing the share screen now. Let's see. Here we go. Right, I'm going to do that one. Let's see if it works. Come on, wakey, wakey. Okay, so hopefully you should be looking at a great big square which has got blue and yellow and different colours. So the yellow bits is what Glenn was talking about as high change areas. This is for Fitzroy and Collingwood. The dark blue bits, if you're living in the middle of the dark blue bits, you're pretty much right, because the state government has very, very strict rules about what is and isn't allowed to go. The height, very strict height limits for the dark blue bits. And the City of Yarra has put heritage overlays that say, okay, yes, the state government says it can't be higher than 11 metres, but I'm telling you, you can't paint that fence any colour you feel like, and you can't mess with the front of the house. So if you're in one of the dark blue bits, this is Fitzroy and Collingwood, over around here or around here, you can pretty much look at your fence and say, I know exactly how high I can go next door. If you are in one of the other colours though, all bets are off, because the purple, the incremental change areas, they're the purple ones, and the blue, what is an increment? It's not in the scheme. Then the moderate change areas are the lighter blue ones. And so, as Glenn pointed out, moderate can be anywhere up to 14 stories. And then you've got the high change areas, which can go even higher than that. So we do have to be prepared to have some of the high change in the yellow areas. This huge area here is gasworks, and that's fine. But where the issues are is the areas that are marked with the light blue, which is moderate, which means depending on which part of the document you look at, anything from 4 to 14, and the purple bit, which is incremental. So it's worth you figuring out, looking at these pictures. This is Fitzroy and Collingwood. This one's Alphington. This one's North Fitzroy. So if you're in the blue zones, you're pretty right. But if you're in the non-blue zones, you really want to try and, it's worth suggesting to the planners that they need to be exactly what do they mean in this area. The state government's paying like $40 million to get this planning done. So we should be able to get a clear answer to the question, how high can it be over my back fence? The people who run the shops need to know what can happen next door to them. If you're a trader and you're in one of these activity centres, you need to know whether your shop is going to be beside a building site or not. So yes, and that's the last. Yes, so that's pretty much it for me. I was going to, if you have a look at the how-to guide. Oh, one last item there is links on the how-to guides to under the housing section to these maps. One last point on sustainability. The place over the back fence 26 to 56 was approved. If we do want to have sustainability actually happen, that means we need carbon neutrality to be able to be done over the next 20 years. What they're building now is going to last, in theory, more than 20 years. So the building over the back fence was approved with all gas, bikes on the bottom underneath the basement, no air drying, no solar panels, a bunch of other measures that were not sustainable. So, and that met the best standards. You could possibly suggest to the City of Yarra they need to consider standards for developments to be quoted as being standards that can actually deliver carbon neutrality, because at the moment the best standard is not delivering sustainability that is consistent with reaching carbon neutrality. Thank you very much for your time. And back to Rod.
Good on you. Thank you very much, Anne. And our next speaker is Todd Perry. Todd, welcome. And if we could hear a little bit about you before you begin, we'd be grateful.
Yep, thanks, Rod. Good evening, everyone. My name's Todd Perry. I'm the president of Alphington Fairfield Appropriate Development Association. I'll just share my screen. Just bear with me. Yeah, so we've been to VCAT 4 times so far. We started off about 2 years ago. We tapped into the brains of Protect Fitzroy North with Anne and Glenn to get up to speed on town planning and urban design. I'm not a town planner or any sort of background in town planning, so much like a lot of the residents, it's sort of learn as you go along. So just checking everyone can see my screen okay?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought I'd give an example of people thinking about their own particular suburb or neighbourhood. And I just want to use Alphington and Fairfield as an example of that. So I guess it raises the initial question: what is it that you find unique, and what you value about your own specific neighbourhood? And using Alphington and Fairfield, the majority of Yarra's open space is up in the northeast of Yarra, so we're effectively the Siberia of Yarra, but a lot of open parkland. We've got the Yarra River to our south, and then Darebin Creek to our east. So we're the green lungs, or the Amazon of Yarra. We're the only neighbourhood in Yarra that's designated as garden, suburban, residential. So what that means is generous front and also side setbacks with large backyards. But as Chris made the point that with extensions and all sorts of things going on, that effectively there is some degreening happening. And we have Alphington Neighbourhood Activity Centre, which is not like a Bridge Road or Victoria Street. It's a lower order activity centre, but it's something that we value in terms of our local village amenity. Yeah, and just on the point of local landmarks and placeholders, when we look at our local neighbourhood, we've got ironically the Tower Hotel and the Grand View Hotel, which are 3-storey buildings. At the time when they were constructed, obviously 3 stories was quite a high building, but now that we're seeing these developments, they're getting dwarfed, and we've got other landmarks like the Porter Brick Chimney to the west, which is on a strategic redevelopment site. We've got the local World War I memorial at Alphington Park. We've got some trees there which were part of the original Avenue of Honour, but just examples of that where, okay, the memorial is heritage listed, but the vista is not, that looks down Park Avenue towards that memorial, of which back in the day the diggers would do their Anzac Day march every year. So, and when you look at developments immediately close to that memorial, 8 stories proposed, it impacts on the local vista as well. So there's things like the landscape and trees where there's an opportunity to protect those vistas and trees. And so there's not just buildings that we need to consider within our own respective neighbourhoods. Specific challenges that we have down at our neck of the woods, Heidelberg Road's on the boundary of Darebin and Yarra councils. We've been lobbying both councils to get a local area plan or a structure plan in place for Heidelberg Road. Yarra Council has progressed that. At the start of the year, they endorsed a local area plan and interim controls to be considered by the Planning Minister. Darebin, I guess there's been other priorities in terms of Northland and Preston Market, which are, I guess, more denser, larger developments. So there's only limited resources. So they've been concentrating on those. So there is 1 or 2 steps behind what Yarra Council's been doing there. The developers are using the Amcor paper mill site as a precedent for development along Heidelberg Road. Up in the northwest corner, there's a 17-storey development going on there. They were using, a developer across the road was using that to justify a 13-storey development. And on the eastern side, there's an 8-storey, of which developers to the east are also using that as a precedent. We've got the Porter strategic redevelopment site. That's the second redevelopment site in Alphington and Fairfield. This one's based in Fairfield. A big concern there is that interfaces with the Yarra Bend Park, and as Anne mentioned earlier, there's the prospect of overshadowing and overlooking parkland there. Considering that it could be up to 8 stories put in that site. Also, I think a point that Anne raised about I'll just jump on the next slide. So these high change areas, so you'll see the yellow there, that's the Amcor site. Just want to consider that, that's gone up to 17 stories and to the west and then 8 to the east, is that particularly properties to the south of these high change areas, you've got that height and mass and overshadowing visual bulk that could potentially be interfacing with minimal change residential housing. So that's something that to keep in mind. Yeah, a big thing for us too is the protection of the Yarra River. We've had some trees at the Amcor site which have fallen into the river. There's been damage to the riverbank there. There's been a lot of groundwater that's damaging the ground along the riverbank there. So that's an area that's got a lot of residents concerned. And as I mentioned before, it's making sure that we've got the heritage protection right across your neighbourhoods, including these trees and landscapes and vistas. Just in terms of the Yarra housing strategy, just a point that Glenn picked up on is that it's a fairly high-level plan that they've put together, but when you start to get into the nitty-gritty of it, that you can really find some inconsistencies there. So example, we've got the Porter development site just circled there in pink. That's designated as incremental. But when we've seen the draft local area plan, the consultants are recommending 8 stories. We've also got the commercial 2 zone land in Fairfield along Heidelberg Road, which is circled there in red. That doesn't have a designation within the Yarra housing strategy, but within the draft local area plan, the recommendation is that that land be developed at the same heights as the Alphington village or neighbourhood activity centre to the east of 6 stories. So it's just going through that sort of detail just to pick up any inconsistencies and highlighting that with your submissions. So yeah, that's basically all I had to say on Alphington. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Todd. And we're going to take up a collection to build an Alphington Town Hall. That'll be nice, won't it?
Thank you, Rod.
Tonight with Kristen Stegley. Kristen, welcome. Thank you for your patience. And if you could just tell us who you are and why you have such big headphones.
Hi, Roddy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thanks. I just took off the headphones. I missed what you said earlier. What did you just say? I said, here's Kristen Stegley. She's going to introduce herself and why does she have such big headphones? Okay, thank you, Roddy. All righty. Well, I think you know as much about me as I know about you, which is we're a couple of old wet bags really from a long way back. But A little bit about me. I'm just like you. I'm absolutely no different to any of you up on the screen, or I suspect any of you out there who are listening. For many years, I've called myself a suburban guerrilla, and have been around planning issues, fighting inappropriate development, advocating for heritage protection controls for as long as I can remember, some 30 plus years. And on it goes. And rightly or wrongly, for my sins and for my troubles, I now fill the role of the chairman of the National Trust of Victoria, which is a great privilege and it's a great honour. And it's very nice to be here with you all this evening. Perhaps just a few words, I think, particularly from a heritage organisation. It's always a good thing to look back before you go forward. And I'd just like to take this opportunity again to just say congratulations and to champion what so many of you have been able to achieve through Amendment C269, an extraordinary win. 400 submissions, obviously very powerful submissions, irrespective of, because of the representation, of course, and there is no doubt that those submissions made a huge difference in helping to turn the tide in favour of a very favourable outcome. So groups and individuals working cooperatively together is very, very powerful stuff. And if you did it once, you can do it again. So remember history, take it with you. And indeed, just, listening to the different representatives from various residents groups, and I know that there are others who are represented as well that might not be speaking here. It just kind of and being a person who actually founded one myself that, grew to have close on 2,000 members. It's a reminder to us, why actually do we form these groups in the first place? Well, in my case, and I suspect in yours as well, it's because we know that one man and a dog howling at the moon gets us absolutely nowhere. But when we come together, and when we start to represent a mass of people, and we start to turn ourselves into a force to be reckoned with, when we come together, that's when we turn from being powerless to being powerful. So everything I've just witnessed over the course of the last 2 hours, I think, everything I've witnessed and everything I've heard is about you all flexing your power. And what you've got to do is just keep on flexing it and keep on growing it. And what I've heard is you corralling that power by the commitment that you bring, the expertise that you bring, by recognising and appealing to so many people out there that they have the opportunity through extending the invitations that you're extending to them. You are reaching out, you understand, and hopefully they understand that they then become a very big chunk of the glue that binds all of this together in a really powerful way. Also flexing your power by being just basically sensible. I think it's really impressive the way so many of you are trying to demystify for ordinary people what is a very complex planning world out there, sometimes intentionally kept very complex, so that it makes the average man in the street find it very difficult to navigate their way through it. And this simplifying of that process is incredibly powerful for people. And I also think that the way the other thing you're doing that's really powerful is by taking this holistic approach. That is really smart. So you're not just coming at issues from a, oh, this is what I'm just like, this is my bag. You're taking a really holistic approach that's looking at obviously heights and mass and all this kind of stuff, but you're looking at sustainability. You're talking about climate change. You're talking about trying to reduce carbon emissions. You're talking about laneways. You're talking about the viability and livability of shopping centres. And of course, you're talking about heritage components, which is pretty important as well. So this holistic approach is very, very sensible and I think really wise, and continuing to build on that would be good. So overall, I think the whole approach is very powerful. Some of you may or may not have heard, I suspect that some of you have heard the term failing to plan is planning to fail. And what I've witnessed here this evening again is you're not planning to fail. You are planning really, really well. You're planning strategically and you are planning to succeed. So all I can say is just keep it up, because you only get one crack at this. As has already been mentioned, the whole rewriting of a municipal massive new planning scheme only happens on few occasions, every 10 or 20 years or so, and these planning schemes have very long-term consequences. So this is a really important opportunity for your communities to get and to have the buy-in that, quite frankly, they deserve. Something I didn't mention, Rod, is a little bit of past experience, life experience of being a local government councillor. I'll just quietly share, I've got to tell you, it wasn't the happiest experience of my life, but anyway, I did get in there to have a crack, and just let me tell you all, your council is there to serve you. The council office is stuck in funny little back rooms out the back and up in ivory towers and all the rest of it. They don't think they're there to serve you, but your elected representatives are. This is your opportunity to tell your representatives how you want them to serve you. Tell them what you want. They're there to listen. And if in the most recent round of local government elections, you elected good people, and I hope you're at the coalface of trying to do that, then this is a really good opportunity. So make the most of it. So coming back to why I think I'm here, turning up as the chairman of the National Trust, is because, so why should any of this be of interest to the National Trust? And it's of interest to the National Trust because heritage matters. Heritage isn't just bricks and mortar, although clearly it's a very significant part of heritage, but it's not just bricks and mortar. It's so much more, and very much about many of the things that you've also been talking about here. Heritage is about community. It's about the things that are loved and are deeply valued by members of our community. It's those things that give us a sense of place, a sense of personal identity, a sense of community, And heritage is absolutely at the heart of our cultural well-being. And a healthy cultural well-being is just as important as healthy physical well-being, healthy mental well-being, healthy social well-being. And it's sometimes not recognised in the way that it should be in that regard. So all of the things that you're trying to achieve through working hard towards this amendment are all going to build strong, healthy cultural well-being, something that's really worth fighting for, because, you know, they're all interconnected. And if you weaken one, you weaken them all. If you strengthen one, you strengthen them all as well. So, so many of the things that have been mentioned here tonight by a number of the speakers, they are very much the threads that go to knit what is our heritage fabric. And keeping our heritage fabric intact is all about is about building and maintaining cultural well-being. That is what the National Trust does, and maintaining the fabric of our heritage. And that is why the National Trust turns up. That's why I've turned up here tonight. That's why the National Trust has been turning up for 65 years. But anyway, when Anne got in touch with me, I think it was only about 24 or 48 hours ago, and we had a very nice conversation. And she told me, I asked her what the evening was about. She told me something about it, and I mentioned to Anne an expression that I like to use from time to time, and that is that the world is run by the people that turn up. And, you know, it's really, really true. If you don't turn up, don't expect to get what you want. Don't expect to get any kind of an outcome that is reasonable. If you turn up, you can actually make things happen. So, and what you're doing here tonight is turning up. And clearly 400 people turned up last time around. So if turning up worked last time, then turn up this time again. And, you know, I feel very confident to say that, that the National Trust will turn up for amendment, just remind me again, for Amendment 269. We turned up for Amendment 231. So, yeah, just make sure that that you turn up. I am now going to engage in a shameful promo, Rod. I hope you don't mind, and I'm sure that you'll give me the okay to do that. And as I mentioned, the National Trust has been turning up for 65 years. And hey, thank God it has been. Because I tell you what, just imagine what else this great city and this great state of Victoria would have lost and seen further destroyed if we hadn't turned up. And so to ensure that the National Trust keeps on turning up, we in fact need your support. And I'm not at all going to embarrass anybody by asking you to raise your hands to tell me whether or not you're a member of the National Trust. Thank you, Roddy, I know you are. But if you're not, then I hope you all are by this time tomorrow, because it is going to be important that in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30 and 50 years' time, that the National Trust is able to turn up to defend the legacy that you are all trying and working so hard to create now. So good luck to everybody, and thanks for the invitation. Bye.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And I notice in the little chat feed here, people are already picking out quotes from the chairman of the National Trust. So that's good. Well, ladies, that pretty much wraps it up. I'll hand you back to Anne because I'm sure she'd like to do the closing and the final entreaties for you. But Anne, and I know you'll thank others, but I'd just like to thank Anne for the extraordinary effort she has put in to bring all these groups together principally, and that's a remarkable achievement. So, and thank you very much to all our speakers. Thank you very much. And we understand we may have in excess of 150 people watching, and it will go up on YouTube, and then more people can watch it after that. So thank you all as speakers and as viewers. Thank you as well. And I'll hand you back to Anne Horrigan-Dixon. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Rod. I'd like to thank everybody that's listened in tonight. I specifically want to thank all of the speakers, but I especially want to thank Kristen Stegley for making the effort of turning up, because her speech was really inspiring. Now, before we close, one of the most important things is our how-to guide, and I wondered if we could have Anne Coveney talk for about 3 minutes on the how-to guide so that it's up online. And it's on the YouTube clip so that people can understand. We did have some questions. We're going to put those questions up with some answers onto the websites. But could Anne Coveney, and I haven't got gallery view here, come up on board and talk about the how-to guide, which she has worked really hard at for a number of days. And when I read it, after saying to her that I had no idea how I would possibly start a submission, after reading the how-to guide, I just want to start my submission. And after all of the speakers tonight, I actually know what I'm going to say now because I was so inspired. Now, a person that hasn't spoken tonight is Greg Chennell from the Fitzroy Residents Association. I really want to thank Greg. And I also want to thank Rod Harris, who hasn't been here because he's been behind the scenes and he's been helping Anne and us with the how-to guide and how to make submissions. He's been terrific. He and Tim Kittle really helped us last time looking at submissions. So Anne, you're going to inspire us all and tell us how to put these submissions in, because this is how we engage. This is how we exercise democracy. This is how we protect our shopping villages. I don't know anybody that wants to have 7 or 8 stories in their local village shopping centre. We need to keep the hearts of our heritage shopping centres, our little shopping centres, because they give back to us and we give back to them. I'm going to give you one short story. The night before my mother died, she walked down to the North Fitzroy shopping centre in 1994. She was very unwell. She walked into every shop. She went to the people that had looked after her. I'm going to start crying. The bank, the post office, the ladies in Peter Monty's, the local butcher. And she thanked everyone. She said, I've really enjoyed my interaction with you. I had no idea she was going to die the next morning. She did. And I thought, does that say something about a local shopping centre or what? So Anne Coveney, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Can you hear me? Can I get a signal? Yes, okay. Sorry, okay, I'm going to do a share screen now. And okay, so here we go. Can you see that? Is it up on the screen? No, it's not. Okay, I'll go back here. Where are we? Share screen. Second time lucky. This one.
Nope.
Okay, you should see. Now, you can see up the top left-hand corner over here, it says protectfitzroynorth.org. That's where the, this is the homepage for the submission starter, and this is where all the different talks are being posted. There'll be more information. We've got somebody who's going to put up a paper on sustainability. So this will be updated. So if you can just see the HTTP at the top, it's basically HTTPS, usual slashes, protectfitzroynorth.org/c29.php. So this will be going out in the it'll be up on the, this page will be listed on the YouTube website, so you can find it there. This is a few notes on the submission helper page. What you need to put in to have a valid submission, you've got to include your name, contact details. You do not have to provide your street address or a phone number because your submission is public, and so but you do need to provide an email address. And that's certainly with Yarra. Providing your submission via email is definitely the easiest. So you need to send your email with the subject line Amendment C269 submission to the strategic planner at the City of Yarra by by the Friday the 4th of December. So this is, I'll click on here. We've got C269, the basic how to and starter guide at the top here. And this will bring up the starter guide, fingers crossed. Yes. So this gives you a hint on how to put in a submission. It includes links to a couple of the documents that were mentioned. You don't have to read them. They're just there to help. There's an example submission on some of the points that I was talking about, but what you write is going to be way more impressive than anything that we wrote. So if you speak from the heart and you say what you would like for your area, what landmarks you need, what needs to be protected, the greenery near you that needs enhancing, look, guys, just go for it. The more the merrier. It just blew everybody away. The 400 submissions with C231, that was what made the difference. That was the first time in over 10 years the Victorian government approved a height limit under 11 metres in a commercial centre. It was truly amazing. So if we can get protection for the heritage strip shops in all of our shopping centres, it will actually be somewhere for people to go to shop and to enjoy, rather than just have big buildings there with empty shops down the bottom. So I'll stop with the editorial and stop scrolling the screen and leave you to throw back to Rod.
Good on you. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, go on. Thanks very much, Anne, and you make it so wonderfully easy. So there's no excuse for anybody not to put a submission in, and we do encourage you to do that. As Kristen said, these sorts of things can have impacts decades long. So very important to sort it out now. I'm now going to stand on the dividing strip between the tennis courts and the Clifton Hill Railway Station, and I'm going to become a landmark. So please mention me in your submissions. So thank you all very much. Thank you again to all our speakers. We look forward to doing something like this again, because this is the future of people sitting in their lounge rooms, coming together and creating a revolution. If only Lennon had Zoom. Okay, good night all. Oh, by the way, very quickly, it looks like, did I say we had 500 views? Well, if we didn't, if I didn't, we did. Hooray, 500 views. So that's it, all over. Bye.